New tonight, a federal warning, a state reversal, and thousands of immigrant truckers in California caught in the crossfire. The state says it must revoke 17,000 commercial licenses to drive because of new federal requirements.
California's port system moves more than $500 billion in goods every year, driving nearly a third of all containerized imports into the United States. But when over 70,000 truck operators are suddenly impacted by overlapping state regulations, the pressure begins to show. The first reported $868,000 penalty under AB 5 has already made headlines.
The Trump administration says it's because of an ongoing audit, but critics say the timing's anything but coincidence. ABC 10's Garshpal Sangha explains what it could mean for your wallet.
And some drivers say they're now weighing whether to relocate their businesses or leave the industry altogether. When a network this massive faces abrupt regulatory shifts, the consequences don't stay small for long. At the center of it all is the San Pedro Bay Port Complex, widely recognized as the largest trade gateway in North America. Each year, cargo valued at more than $500 billion moves through these docks, supporting supply chains that stretch into every region of the country. Nearly 1 out of every 3 containerized imports enters through this hub.
The state calls it a correction, fixing licenses issued beyond when drivers are allowed in the country legally. But for thousands of immigrant truckers, advocates say it feels like punishment wrapped in politics.
Helping sustain an estimated 3 million jobs across warehousing, retail, logistics, and manufacturing. With operations at this scale, even modest slowdowns can create noticeable effects nationwide. In 2025, California's freight sector is navigating the combined rollout of 3 major policies: AB 5, AB 692, and the Advanced Clean Trucks Rule. Each measure addresses a different part of the trucking industry, but together, they directly affect tens of thousands of independent operators who have long relied on the contractor model for flexibility and independence.
The issue exploded nationwide after a series of deadly crashes, renewing questions about state-issued CDLs to drivers here without permanent status.
Supporters of the reforms argue they are long overdue, saying that clearer classification standards and updated requirements are designed to strengthen workplace protections and modernize the industry. Meanwhile, others in the freight community say the transition is happening fast, leaving many businesses racing to adjust to a new reality. Industry leaders have warned that the financial impact of compliance could ripple through the entire supply chain. They argued that new requirements may raise operational costs at multiple levels, from transportation providers to retailers. Governor Gavin Newsom, responding to concerns from both labor organizations and business groups, has described the state's approach as a step toward greater fairness and environmental progress. Policy briefings from Sacramento present the combined regulations as an effort to modernize the freight industry while addressing long-standing classification disputes and workplace standards. With tens of thousands of operators adjusting to these changes, the implications stretch well beyond California's borders. Because the state plays such a central role in national logistics, any slowdown linked to reclassification rules, contract limitations, compliance training, or zero-emission vehicle mandates could influence shipping timelines across the country. As enforcement efforts move forward, many in the industry are watching closely to see how these overlapping rules function in day-to-day operations. October 30th, 2025, the California Labor Commissioner issued citations that quickly drew statewide attention. 3 companies, Mega Nice Trucking, Ryder Last Mile, and Costco, were assessed a combined $868,128 in penalties related to the classification of 58 delivery drivers in the San Diego area. According to official findings, the drivers had been classified as independent contractors and compensated using flat daily rates without overtime eligibility or access to certain employment benefits. The enforcement action required the companies to adjust their practices and review compliance procedures moving forward. State labor data indicates that employee drivers in California earn an average of about $35,000 annually, while many independent contractors report average earnings closer to $28,783, though income can vary depending on contracts and workload. These figures have intensified the broader conversation about how compensation structures are evolving under the new regulatory framework. The pay difference has long been at the center of the AB5 debate, and now it carries real-world consequences for both companies and drivers. For drivers like Dean Martinez, who spent years hauling freight on his own schedule, the recent citation was more than a news headline. It forced a serious decision about whether to relocate his business operations or shift away from the independent model that originally attracted him to the work. The flexibility he valued suddenly felt uncertain. Landstar, one of the country's largest carriers, reportedly presented 365 California-based operators with two options: move their operations out of state or secure independent operating authority. For many, that second path involves additional licensing, insurance, and administrative costs that can be significant. Others faced even tougher outcomes. California Intermodal Associates, a company that had operated in the drayage sector for more than 25 years, announced it would close, citing Coxney's rising compliance expenses tied to the new regulations. Drivers like Luis Garcia described the overall mood across freight corridors as tense and unpredictable. Each enforcement action, business closure, or relocation proposal has gradually reduced available trucking capacity in the state, prompting many operators to reassess their next steps. Business owners and drivers alike are weighing financial risks, legal requirements, and long-term stability in an environment that continues to evolve quickly. At the same time, federal oversight added another layer of review. In late 2025, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration began a nationwide audit focused on commercial driver's license records. California's Department of Motor Vehicles later reported reviewing 17,299 licenses to address compliance questions identified during the process. Each flag case involved a mismatch between a driver's work authorization timeline and the expiration date listed on their commercial driver's license. Federal officials notified the state that licensing records would need to align fully with national standards, or certain highway funding allocations could be placed under review, including up to $40 million connected to compliance benchmarks. For California's logistics sector, already adjusting to multiple new regulations, the timing added another layer of pressure. Drivers born outside the United States make up roughly 20% of California's trucking workforce, many playing essential roles in port drayage and regional freight routes. The audit process left thousands waiting for clarification about their eligibility to continue operating, creating uncertainty across key transport corridors. Industry associations cautioned that a large reduction in experienced drivers, even temporarily, could tighten capacity at a sensitive moment for freight movement. These developments came on top of ongoing adjustments related to classification standards and training requirements. In December, advocacy organizations filed a legal challenge, arguing that certain license review procedures needed clearer safeguards and improved communication. Federal agencies maintained that the review focused on safety and documentation accuracy, while port operators and carriers began preparing contingency plans in case of staffing gaps. The broader concerns centered on operational stability, as licensing disruptions can affect scheduling, delivery timelines, and warehouse coordination across the supply chain. On January 1, 2026, AB 692 officially took effect, introducing additional workforce protections. The law restricts employers from requiring drivers to repay training costs if they choose to leave a position, addressing contract provisions sometimes described as stay or pay clauses. Violations can result in penalties starting at $5,000 per impacted worker. Recruiters and carriers that previously relied on such agreements are now reassessing retention strategies under the updated framework, adding yet another adjustment for an industry already navigating rapid change. Carriers are now facing a new reality, attracting and retaining drivers without relying on financial repayment clauses. Many companies are reworking their training programs to comply with the updated law, calculating whether higher upfront investment will pay off in long-term stability. At the same time, they are weighing the possibility that newly trained drivers could move to competing firms in a tight labor market. The pressure to adapt quickly is building from every direction. Another major factor shaping the industry's path forward is the state's Advanced Clean Trucks rule, overseen by the California Air Resources Board. The policy is designed to accelerate the transition towards zero-emission vehicles, but infrastructure development remains a significant hurdle. Currently, about 2,082 charging ports are available statewide for medium and heavy-duty trucks. However, state projections estimate that nearly 157,000 chargers will be needed by 2030 to support a large-scale transition. That gap between today's capacity and tomorrow's targets is substantial. The financial commitment is equally significant. A zero-emission Class 8 truck typically carries a price tag between $400,000 and $600,000. Often 2 to 3 times higher than a comparable diesel vehicle. Smaller fleets can apply for assistance through the hybrid and zero-emission truck and bus voucher incentive project, with potential incentives reaching up to $240,000 per truck. Even with these credits, many operators say the capital required to upgrade equipment, secure charging access, and maintain cash flow presents a serious challenge. As of October 2024, approximately 415 zero-emission trucks were registered at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, underscoring the scale of the transition still ahead. Energy economist Dr. Maya Patel has noted that the gap between policy goals and infrastructure readiness could become a defining issue for the freight sector in the coming years. Despite these structural changes, cargo volumes remain strong. In 2024, the Port of Los Angeles processed 10.3 million 20-foot equivalent units, while Long Beach handled 9.6 million. Among the highest totals ever recorded, the numbers highlight both the port's immense capacity and the high stakes involved as regulatory reforms and modernization efforts continue to unfold. By May 2025, the momentum had shifted. Monthly cargo throughput at the combined port complex fell to 700 to 16,619 TEUs, marking the lowest level in 2 years. Port executives linked the fluctuation to changing trade policies and a rush by businesses to move shipments ahead of anticipated tariff adjustments. Even with the slowdown, operations continued, highlighting both the resilience of California's freight network and its sensitivity to global economic shifts. The National Retail Federation's chief economist has projected a 10% to 17% decline in California port volumes during the first quarter of 2026, pointing to the combined impact of regulatory transitions and evolving trade patterns. Industry reports describing canceled orders and rising storage costs have added to concerns about potential supply chain congestion. While forecasts vary, the outlook suggests a period of adjustment that could test logistics planning nationwide. At a press conference in Sacramento, Governor Gavin Newsom addressed the growing attention surrounding the issue, stating, "We are on the brink of a logistics disruption that could affect every American household. Coordinated action between state agencies, industry, and labor is not optional. It's essential." He reaffirmed the state's long-term goal of achieving zero-emission freight operations by 2035, alongside strengthened workplace standards, while also acknowledging that implementation will require flexibility and close coordination as market conditions continue to evolve. California's trucking sector now stands at a defining crossroads. Regulatory reforms, economic headwinds, infrastructure demands, and workforce adjustments are all converging at once. The outcome will influence not only driver compensation and business models, but also the broader stability of national supply chains. What unfolds along these highways in the coming months could shape how goods move across the country for years to come.